All right, my friends, are we ready to talk about kitchens? Now, designing a kitchen can be kind of a daunting process. They are one of the most technically demanding spaces to plan. They are very often the most expensive, and they can lead to some pretty big regrets if you get it wrong. So in this video, I want to share with you some of my best kitchen design tips that I've learned after years of planning many kitchens. My first job actually after college was working for a certain home improvement retailer where the staff wear orange aprons. And while not the most glamorous of jobs, I learned a lot about designing kitchens, way beyond what we touched on in design school, and it really has served me well over the years. Today we're going to touch on kitchen planning and organization, selecting materials and finishes, and some design ideas and inspiration. Because while, of course, the most important thing is for your kitchen to be functional, we also want it to look good. So whether you are building or renovating or just want to make a few small changes to your existing kitchen, I have got you covered. And if you're not looking for any kitchen design tips right now, but you do want to see some pretty pictures, I've got lots of kitchen inspiration images to share. So let's get right into it. Okay, when it comes to kitchen layout, there are 4 basic shapes that are commonly used to categorize kitchen layouts. So there's L shape, U shape, galley kitchens, and single wall kitchens. And these do also sometimes incorporate an island or a peninsula. Now, unless you are building a brand new custom home, you're not necessarily going to have all that much control over the general shape of your kitchen, but you can have more control over what you do with the shape that you have. One of the most important considerations in terms of the functionality of your kitchen is what is referred to as the work triangle. So basically, this is the traffic pattern between your sink, your stove, and your fridge. And unless your kitchen is all on one wall, this is normally going to create a triangle. Optimally, you want each side of this triangle to be between 4 and 9 feet, and you don't want the total distance to add up to any more than 26 feet. Basically, by adhering to this guideline, you're ensuring that you have an adequate amount of space to work within each zone while keeping the zones close enough together that you're not wasting time and energy moving around the room unnecessarily. Another important consideration is clearances, especially the clearance between countertops. So this could be in like a galley kitchen, the amount of space you have between the 2 sides, or it could be the clearance from the kitchen walls to an island or peninsula. Not enough space can make it difficult to open cabinets or appliances, and it can also impede your ability to have more than one person working in the kitchen at a time. Whereas if you have too much clearance, it can lead to an inefficient work triangle. Now, a lot of builders will squeeze in a kitchen island where they have only left 36 inches of clearance from countertop to countertop. I see this done all the time. But something that you should be aware of is that the National Kitchen and Bath Association does actually recommend that for one cook, you have a minimum of 42 inches of clearance, and for multiple cooks, a minimum of 48 inches. So when it comes to the basics of planning a kitchen layout, you definitely want to keep these guidelines in mind, but you also really need to give a lot of thought to how you need your kitchen to work for you. Imagine preparing a meal or hosting a dinner party. How do you need your kitchen to function? Kitchen organization, another really important consideration in creating a functional kitchen. If you're planning a new kitchen, this might mean choices about cabinetry, but you can also improve the organization in an existing kitchen. When it comes to your lower cabinets, drawers are typically going to be more functional and easier to organize than cabinets with doors. Cabinet rollouts are another great, more cost-effective alternative to drawers. They're also great in that they can often be retrofitted into existing cabinets, but do keep in mind that you're going to have that extra step of having to open the cabinet door first. Although when it comes to really bulky or tall items like small appliances, these sometimes can be accommodated by a rollout when a typical cabinet drawer might not be deep enough. And then there are those rollouts or pullouts that are actually attached to the cabinet door, and those can be great options for things like garbage or recycling bins. As for upper cabinets, you want to really think about height. Taking your cabinets all the way to the ceiling means more storage space, and it also means not having to dust the top of your cabinets. Which reminds me, I probably need to do that. If you're considering pantry options, you may be looking at walk-in pantries versus cabinet pantries. Now, obviously a walk-in pantry is going to take up a larger footprint, so you really need to consider whether or not you can spare that square footage. If not, cabinet pantries can be a great alternative. Think about adding things like rollouts or door racks so that you can really optimize that storage space. Now, depending on your situation and your budget, there are all kinds of clever ideas for kitchen storage and organization out there. One that I think is quite great is the pet bowls that pull out from your toe kick. I think this is just a great way to make use of what would have otherwise been wasted space. And then I also came across on Pinterest one day these pull-out step stools, which as a short person, I think are pretty genius. Okay, there are a lot of decisions to make when it comes to materials and finishes for a kitchen, and they're pretty big and rather permanent investments, so you want to get it right. Okay, let's talk countertops. Now, the two most common countertop materials that are probably the ones that are used most often right now, the ones we hear the most about, are either quartz or some version of a natural stone. But there are other options out there. Take plastic laminate countertops, for example, which I know no one is really a big fan of, but they are an option and they're very affordable. Now, I, up until very recently, had always had plastic laminate countertops my entire life. I'm pretty used to them. So, I mean, no, you can't cut on them, but you really shouldn't be cutting on your counters anyway. And no, you can't put anything hot on them. They're not heat resistant, but again, you shouldn't really be putting hot stuff on your counters anyway. So as long as you're willing to sort of work with the limitations, plastic laminate doesn't have to be that bad. Now, aesthetically, some are certainly better than others. I'm not really a fan of the ones that are made to look like stone. They just look like cheap imitations. But in a contemporary kitchen, some of sort of the more subtle patterns or some of the bold, solid colors, I think can kind of be a fun option. I especially like them when they're done with that exposed plywood edge. I think those are kind of cool. So they might be something you might want to consider if you are on a budget. And then there are other options that are maybe less popular but are still out there for countertops. You know, there are things like concrete or stainless steel or butcher block. Concrete can look really cool, but it can chip, it can crack, it can stain, it has to be sealed. So it's not the most durable or low maintenance of countertop options. Stainless steel is a very specific look that you might be into if you want sort of that industrial feel in your kitchen. They're pretty low maintenance. They can last a really long time. There is a reason that they are used so frequently in commercial kitchens. But yes, they can scratch and they can also be quite pricey. Now, butcher block counters are warm. They can have a lot of character. I tend to think of them as being an option for people that consider themselves to be real serious cooks. You know, the kind of people that really love their wood cutting boards. Now, they can be done at a pretty reasonable price point, but keep in mind there is going to be some maintenance required. They can scratch, they can stain, they're not water resistant, although they can be sanded down and resealed if they get damaged. And resealing your butcher block countertops periodically is going to be part of the maintenance. So if you do like the idea of butcher block, maybe consider using it sparingly. Maybe you just have it in one section or just on the island rather than having it throughout your entire kitchen. Porcelain is a manufactured countertop material that has been gaining in popularity as an alternative to quartz. It is comparable in price to quartz and is equally as low maintenance because neither product needs to be sealed, and it's actually more heat resistant than quartz. It's a thinner material and it has a different look to it than quartz, which may or may not appeal to you. And while it is pretty durable and scratch resistant, it can be prone to chipping. Quartz countertops are made of ground up stone that is then mixed with a resin, so they are considered a manufactured product. They've become an incredibly popular option for countertops because they are durable and they're low maintenance. They're scratch resistant, they're stain resistant, although they are not as heat resistant as porcelain or granite. Quartz can be a great option if you are looking for something low maintenance and long lasting, but I do recognize that not everyone loves the look of a quartz countertop. Some people just prefer the character of natural stone. Now, as far as natural stone, not all equal, you want to do your homework. Marble, for example, is beautiful, not particularly durable, and really prone to staining. Granite is a more durable option, but it's not indestructible. It is very heat resistant, yes, but you really still should not be leaving hot pots on it because while you're not going to hurt the stone, you can actually mar the sealant. Because yes, granite, marble, or any natural stone countertop is porous. It has to be sealed, and that does also mean periodically needing to reseal it. So that is my basic overview of countertops. Do with that information what you will. Okay, now let's talk backsplashes. Now, if you are a serious cook, you might care about durability, cleanability, but in all honesty, I think for most of us, it really comes down to aesthetics. Now, some people like the look of continuing their countertop material up onto their backsplashes, and you can certainly do that. But I would say that the most commonly used material for backsplashes is probably still tile. And tile definitely has its benefits. It is pretty durable and low maintenance. It is pretty cost effective unless you're picking a really expensive tile. And you've got a ton of different style options with all of the shapes and colors and patterns available. You can find a tile to work with pretty much any look. Cabinetry is, of course, one of the biggest decisions you're going to make when it comes to choosing finishes for your kitchen. There are many options for wood, but if you prefer a solid color, there are painted or lacquered cabinets as well. There are also finishes like thermofoil, which is a heat-wrapped PVC vinyl coating, or laminate, which is essentially just a thinner version of the plastic laminate that is used on countertops. Thermofoil and laminate may be done in a solid color or in a faux wood look. It isn't always easy or straightforward to know what is going to be your most durable option in terms of cabinet finish. Different manufacturers are going to adhere to different standards. And while it is often a matter of price and getting what you pay for, you really want to do your homework and understand the product that you're looking at and what kind of warranty is being offered. When it comes to cabinet doors, there are so many options to suit so many styles. Material, color, door style, hardware are all going to be important considerations. When it comes to wood doors, the price can vary a lot depending on the species of wood. So woods like oak or maple are really common, and they tend to be a better price point than if you were to go with something like cherry or walnut. Now, cherry and walnut are, of course, beautiful options, but something else you want to keep in mind. These are species of wood where the color will change a lot with exposure to sunlight. So ask if you can see samples that have been exposed to light for prolonged periods of time, just to make sure that you're still going to be happy with the color. Now, when it comes to solid wood versus veneer, this is going to be another consideration for wood doors. If you are looking at a door style that has a frame on it, typically the frame is going to be solid wood. Now, that center panel, it may or it may not be. If it is a raised center panel, so something that has like some detail or a profile to it, those very often are also going to be solid wood. But if you go with a door style that has a flat center panel, those are often veneer. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. A flat center panel is thinner. So if they were to construct those from solid wood, it's going to be more likely to warp or twist or crack. So by making that panel from a more stable material like an MDF and then covering it with a wood veneer, you're usually going to have a more durable and stable door. This is also the case if you're looking at a flat slab wood door. Those typically are also going to be constructed from a wood veneer. As for the construction of the cabinet boxes, again, this is often a matter of getting what you pay for. The most economical option is typically going to be the prefab flat-packed cabinets that you find at the big box retailers. And while they do often gear these towards the DIY person, you also usually can have these assembled and installed for you for an additional fee. You're typically going to be looking at a basic melamine cabinet box with pretty basic hardware. And by hardware, we're usually referring to hinges and drawer glides. And because these are prefab, these are going to come in modular sizes, so you're going to have more limitations in the product offerings. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad way to go. As long as they are assembled and installed properly and you're not being overly hard on your cabinets, they can be a good option that can last you for many, many years. If you do want to step up a bit in quality and in price, you can also find options for prefab cabinets that come already fully assembled. These do tend to be a little better quality, but you're still going to face the same limitations in sizes and product offerings. Now, your most costly cabinet option is usually going to be custom cabinets, meaning cabinetry that is made to order. Now, this also usually means these are going to be your best quality cabinets, but you do want to be aware that price and quality can really vary from one supplier to the next. Custom cabinetry is also going to give you the most flexibility in terms of product offerings because, again, we're looking at made to order. Now that we have gotten all of that sort of more technical stuff out of the way, let's move on to the fun part, which is making your kitchen look good. Now, there are so many styles and trends and sources of inspiration out there. It can be a lot to go through. So I have pulled together some images of some kitchens that I think are really well done, and I thought we could talk about them. So yeah, let's do that, shall we? So in terms of color, this kitchen is pretty neutral, but it's definitely not bland. I really like the use of materials and of pattern. Like the back of the island, it looks like it's been clad in some sort of cinder block, and then you have all this mix of textures in the floor and the cabinets, the tile, and even the plaster finish on the walls. And I also really like that little wavy detail on the floating shelves and how it relates back to the detail on the counter stools. I really love the use of pattern in this kitchen. You know, that marble is pretty busy, and I think a lot of people would have been tempted to then keep the floor really simple, but I actually like the drama that's created by combining these two elements. And I also really like that marble shelf, and this is something that I've been noticing quite a lot lately, where we're seeing these marble backsplashes that are then capped with a little marble shelf or ledge. And I know we can't all sacrifice the wall space to achieve something like this, but I do really like the look. I think it's a nice way of displaying some dishware or leaning some artwork. I also like the idea of incorporating a really cool wall sconce just to add to the overall composition. This is just such a gorgeous kitchen. I love the way that the hood fan has been so seamlessly integrated into the upper cabinets, and then the curve detail on those upper cabinets and on the island. And then the use of wood. You've got the herringbone floors, the burl wood on the island, and then you've got these lower cabinets that I'm guessing are like maybe a walnut. They're all quite different, but they work together so beautifully. I like everything about this image. I like the style of the cabinets. I like the color of the range and how it ties in with the marble, the painting, the wall sconce. I think it is all just so lovely. I chose this kitchen because I think that the metallic finish on the cabinets is really unique. It adds this patina that just brings so much character and depth to the space. I love the idea of using bold pops of color in a really sleek and minimal kitchen. And that stainless steel toe kick on the island, I think, is also a really cool little detail. I like the way that the doors on these cabinets have been inset slightly from the exposed frame. I just think that adds such an interesting little detail. And I also really love the color pairing of this soft green with the warm woods. I think that's such a pretty combination. Now, painted cream cabinets with a dark stone countertop, maybe not the most original combination in a kitchen, but I think by pairing them with this terracotta tile and the pastel ceiling, it just feels so much more unique and unexpected. And the Persian rugs. I love a vintage Persian rug in a kitchen. I think it just adds so much warmth and character. I feel like I have maybe used this photo before, but it's just so good. I'm gonna happily use it again. I love the juxtaposition of a sleek contemporary kitchen like this against the classic elements of the space. So this is another pretty sleek and minimal kitchen. I like the green of the cabinets and the wood countertop. At least from what I can tell, I think that's a wood countertop, but whatever they've done there, I think it's added a lot of warmth to the space. I also like the way that they've used the shorter cabinets below the window to create like a bench seat. So if you are someone that has a large window in your kitchen that drops below countertop height, I think that's a really great idea to keep in mind. All right, friends. That's everything I have for you today on designing kitchens. This is a very basic overview. I mean, this is a very involved topic. I could have said a lot more, but I don't want to overwhelm anyone. If you are building a new home or if you're planning a big kitchen renovation, a lot of cabinet companies will offer some sort of complimentary design service, and I would definitely consider taking them up on that, because even if you have a sort of basic understanding of kitchens, they can be pretty complicated. Things like appliances, we didn't even touch on that today. You know, clearances and proper openings and, you know, what you need to do to meet building code in your area. These are all things that you have to keep in mind. So not a bad idea to talk to a professional, but hopefully this has answered a few of your questions. If you have any other questions about kitchen design or any requests for future videos about kitchens, then leave me a comment. But thank you so much for watching. I hope we see you at the next one, and bye for now.